Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another literature review, and it is another Stephen King one. It is another short story from the Night Shift collection. It is I Am the Doorway. Originally published in a 1971 issue of Cavalier magazine, it was eventually put in this collection. And it's another interesting little short story. It is about a former astronaut named Arthur who was involved in these missions to Venus. You know, doing a lot of experiments there, mainly with the atmosphere, doing flyovers. On his return, the ship was compromised during landing. It crashed, his partner was killed, and he was disabled from the waist down. He got a medical discharge, he got a good sum of money, a decent pension. Kind of, it's hard to tell with the one little bit of prose that mentions it, whether he's being facetious or not. I interpret it as facetious. So, and he lives out on the Florida Keys watching the shuttles take off because, you know, disabled former astronaut, what else is there for him to do? Now, it's been 5 years since the mission, and something strange is starting to happen to him. On his hands, eyes are starting to grow. Now, when the story begins, they're already there, and they've already taken over his mind and made him kill another local. One that, before they started to come out, he would see him every now and again. He'd be like waving like, "Howdy, neighbor. Hey." Well, one day, the kid happened to pass by. He did not have his hands bandaged, because he would bandage them, you know, to get the guys to not look. Because apparently with these eyes, when they're open, he does kind of get the sensation of looking through them. But it gets a different mindset. So he has that alien mindset clashing with his human mindset. So it kind of has a little bit of that Invasion of the Body Snatchers vibe to it. And also, maybe it also has that same type of vibe that the second entry in the Dark Tower series has whenever Roland is coming forward into the mind of one of the others. Mainly Jack Mort, because Mort's all freaking out like, "What do you want? What do you want?" It's kind of like that, only in a different vibe. Instead of someone human coming into your mind and taking over your body, it's an alien presence that has no idea what this type of world is. It's like, what's that? What's that? What's that? But instead of looking at it with curiosity, it's looking at it with disdain. Because whenever the alien presence through the eyes sees something that he thinks is normal, he can sense that it's looking at it with hate. Like when it's looking at himself, he's like, "This alien being, what are we on?" And of course, it is this feeling that eventually causes him to kill the boy. And throughout most of the story, he's talking to his friend Richard, telling him about it. You know, as he says, "I am the doorway." He's the doorway for these things. He explains to Richard everything that's going on, and Richard's like, "After 5 years, man, you're just messing it." So Richard is taken to the spot where Arthur hid the body. It's gone, so he's thinking they moved. So in order to prove to Richard once for all that he is the doorway, he shows them the eyes. Richard starts freaking out a little bit, and then it's when he sees the eyes and the eyes see him that they go to control Arthur's body again. And Arthur had told him, if anything looks like it's about to happen, run. He does, and this is when the alien beings show that they are not only taking over his body, but they have some weird powers. Like they send a bunch of energy out. It's supposed to be like metaphysical, and then all of a sudden, Richard gets struck by lightning and killed. And it's after this that Arthur feels that the alien presence has exhausted a lot of its energy, and you know, they're like, time for... And it's after this that Arthur decides enough is enough, and he basically soaks his hands in kerosene and burns them. And then from that, we get the last part of the story, and it ends on a downer. But given the type of story it is, it's like, could you expect anything else from early King? I mean, a lot of his stories usually would end all suddenly, where you don't know exactly what's going to happen, but there's enough stated that you can kind of guess what's going to happen. This would be a good example. The Mangler would be a good example. I'd say even the original Mist is a good example, even though I prefer the ending in the movie because it's a lot more finite and a lot more tragic, but it's kind of based a little bit on how he leaves the story open-ended, just continues it to its conclusion. Here, with what it ends, you're like, yep, he's gonna do it, because with what's gonna happen, yeah, it's definitely a short story that if they did an anthology film, it would make a very interesting part, like maybe the second entry in the movie. You could just imagine the practical special effects using it. Nowadays, they probably use all CGI for the eyes, but I would just love to see them done practically. Just looking at him and then all looking at him with hate and all that. Maybe add a little CGI to give him a slightly more alien appearance, but not fully CG. At least that would be my preference. Then, of course, you can do a lot of model work involving the spaceship and all that, but You know, it's just a thought I'm rolling around. King's prose for the story is pretty good. I do like how it jumps back and forth from Richard and Arthur talking to explaining Arthur's backstory and how he ended up in the wheelchair and all the talk about the space race. This was written in 71, so space race was still going on pretty well, and they do mention an Apollo mission, which I'm guessing is probably a fictional one for the story's purpose. Which, that's probably one of the weird things that, in retrospect, you'd have to get around if you were to turn this into a film, or part of a film. I thought of an easy explanation, though. You could always just set it in a fictional universe and maybe not talk specifically, or you could have in that universe that at the same time as the Apollo missions, we were doing other missions. It's just one of those things that you got to get creative with it because of the hindsight stuff. And nothing really else to say about it. If you've read a lot of King's early works, you kind of get an idea for how the prose and how the ending is. And it's a very interesting short story. I have a feeling I'd probably put it in my top 10. One of these days, maybe for more talks, I'll do a top 10 Stephen King short stories. And nothing really else to say about it.